Hi there and welcome to MPT Creates. In this video, part of my Tunisian Tuesday series, if you're very new to Tunisian crochet, this is the project for you. This is the Tunisian Simple Stitch Infinity Cowl made only in Tunisian Simple Stitch, and so we're going to go right from the very beginning, learn how to do this stitch, learn how to change colors, learn how to make cute little stripes, and make a Mobius, and add an edging. And I'm using two colors of Luster by Karen Simply Me. This is called Pearly, and I already lost the label for this one, so I'll have to look it up and put it in the description. Otherwise, I'm using a Tunisian crochet hook that is an 8mm, and I'm using a traditional crochet hook that is a 7mm. I'm just going to use the regular crochet hook for the edging. Now, I have made this in a Mobius, which means it is one never-ending loop. You can wear it single, hanging down, or you can double it around your neck. Let's jump right in and start with our chain and our very first row. Like we do with traditional crochet, I'm going to start with a slip knot on my hook, and for my scarf I'm going to chain 20. We're going to take the yarn over from back to front and bring it through the working loop. So this is just like traditional crochet at this point. If I wanted my scarf to be wider, I would chain more than 20. If I wanted it to be narrower, I would chain less than 20. And since we're just working in Tunisian Simple Stitch and we're working in a simple stripe pattern, it works no matter how many chains you have. So if you want to adjust your width, do it now. Here are my 20 chains. Now, all Tunisian crochet is a two-part row. In the forward pass, we are putting loops on the hook, and in the return pass, we are taking loops off the hook. I try not to say always or never when I'm teaching any kind of craft technique, but for Tunisian crochet, it is always a two-part row. Now, we're going to do row 1 forward. So we're putting loops on the hook. And I want to have 20 stitches. I want the same number of stitches that I chained. So I'm going to pick up stitches, and I like to work in the back bump of the chain. So here is the front. These are the V's. And this is how many of us were taught to work in crochet, but I like to use the back bump, and frankly, I do it for all of my crochet projects, not just Tunisian crochet, but especially Tunisian crochet. So you see these little bumps sticking out? There's one little back bump for each chain that I made. So I'm going to skip the bump that is closest to my hook, and I'm going to go front to back in the next bump, yarn over from back to front, and draw up a loop. And I want to make sure, especially when I'm working with a big hook like this, that I get that loop all the way up to the fattest part of my hook. If I work too close to the throat, it's going to be too tight. So front to back through the bump, yarn over back to front, draw it through that chain, and make sure it's up on the fat part of the hook. So you can see I have 3 loops here. This is the thing that really tends to throw people who are great crocheters, but who are not experienced with Tunisian crochet. They keep wanting to work those loops off, and it's too soon. Front to back under the bump, yarn over from back to front, and draw up a loop. So I'm going to do this all the way across. Here are my 20 loops all in a row. Now, since we're only working in Tunisian Simple Stitch, we're going to do what's called the standard return, and we're only going to use the standard return. So, to make a standard return, some people write it differently. Some people say yarn over, draw through 1 loop on your hook. Some people say chain 1. Both of those nomenclatures work. Whatever works in your head is the right way to go. So at this point, I still have 20 loops on my hook. I haven't taken any off. Now, for the whole rest of this return, I'm going to yarn over and draw it through 2 loops on my hook. Once again, making sure that that working loop gets up on the fat part of the hook. Yarn over, draw through 2. Yarn over, draw through 2 forever and ever and ever until I only have 1 loop remaining on my hook. And that is the end of row 1. This is not 2 rows. It's 1 row. A forward pass and a return pass. Now I like to write a lot of Tunisian crochet patterns, and if I'm using a standard return, you'll see a note somewhere in the pattern that says we're using the standard return. I'm not going to write it out. So if you look at my Tunisian crochet patterns, they'll say row 1 forward, do this, row 2 forward, do this, row 3 forward, do that. If I'm using a standard return, I don't write it out every single time because it takes up a lot of space, but I will let you know in the notes. So here we are coming to the end. There's 2 loops left on my hook. I'm going to yarn over and draw through 2. So I have 1 loop left on my hook, and this is what it looks like. Now, however many rows of Tunisian crochet you do, the most recent one will always be what we call open. And it looks like this little mesh. And you're not going to worry about it because every row of Tunisian crochet closes the row before. So now we're going to learn Tunisian Simple Stitch. It's the only stitch you need for this cowl. You're going to skip the first vertical bar. Remember how I said I don't like to say always or never? You almost always skip the first vertical bar in Tunisian crochet, and we are certainly always going to skip the first vertical bar today. So this guy here on the end, don't worry about it because this loop counts as a stitch. So I've already got 1 loop on my hook, so I'm going to the next one. I'm going to go right to left under the vertical bar that's laying on top or in front of the work. I'm going to yarn over, draw up a loop. I'm going to go to the next vertical bar. I'm going to go under it from right to left, yarn over, draw up a loop. Make sure you get it up on the fat part of the hook. I'm not going through the work for this stitch, just under that bar. Now, the other thing I've heard, I've taught this class so many times in the room, people have a difficulty finding the vertical bar, and it's not so hard to see in this because it's so big, which is one of the reasons we're doing it for a beginner project. But if you have a hard time finding the next vertical bar, give it a tug this way. I'm pulling the top of the mesh with my left hand and the bottom with my right hand. You see how that's stacking up? And it's giving me these big squares that I can see pretty much through. We're not going in between today. We're not going to the back of the work today. We're just looking for vertical bars. So I'm going to go all the way across and pick up 1 stitch in every vertical bar, which, counting the one I started with, is going to give me 19, and then I want to show you the edge stitch, because on the left hand side we treat the edge stitch just a little bit differently. You can see that we're closing up the row below. See how you can't see through this anymore? That's what I mean by closing the row. So we're here at the edge. It's a little fiddly the first time you do it. I'm sorry to say, it does get easier later. But for the edge stitch, instead of just going through the vertical bar like that, which leaves you this kind of loopy-doopy edge that is not even, you want to go under that bar and under the strand that's directly behind it. So my hook is going under 2 strands of yarn. Yarn over and draw up a loop and get it up on my hook. This is going to make more sense later when you see a bunch of these in a row, but what I get is this nice edging that very much looks like the nice edging on this side. The reason we make the edge stitch the way we do is, in the first place, it's sturdier, but also then your 2 sides look the same, and if you want to put an edging, you want to do whatever, you have a nice edging to work in. So we're going to do the standard return. That's yarn over, draw through 1 or chain 1, however it makes sense in your brain. Then yarn over and draw through 2, over and over and over again until only 1 stitch remains. So this is what it looks like when 2 rows have been completed. We've gone forward and back and forward and back. So that's 2 rows. The first one is closed because it has another row in it. The last one is open because it's the last one that we did. So this is all I'm going to do over and over and over. I'm going to insert my hook right to left through the vertical bar, yarn over and draw up a loop all the way across. Remember, we're going to skip the edge stitch on the right hand side. We're always going to skip that first vertical bar today. Let's take a look at that edge stitch one more time. We're going to go under the vertical bar and under the strand right behind it. So we have 2 strands on top of the hook. Yarn over and draw through both of those strands. So you see how we're getting, if you knit, it almost looks like stockinette stitch coming up the left hand side. And again, you have these nice little loops up the side that mirror the nice little loops we're having on this side. So if you're following along with the pattern, and you can run over to the blog if you wish to see it all written out. I've done my chain 20, I've done my first row, and then I keep going until I have completed 42 rows in this color, and then I changed to the pearly. So to change color, and this is going to be important later when we talk about the stripes, you want to make sure that your forward pass and your return pass are the same color. But there's one little tip I want to show you. When I have 2 loops left on my hook on the return pass of the row before I want to work in the new color, I'm going to make that last yarn over draw through 2 in my new color. And to do that, Tunisian crochet by and large does not unravel unless you take your hook out and pull on it. It's not like knitting where you could drop a stitch. So I'm just bringing up a fold of the yarn 4 to 6 inches from the end because I like to leave a nice long tail to weave in later. So there's my color change. And now for the next row, I'm all set up. I'm going to go right to left under the next vertical bar, yarn over, draw a loop. This is what we've been doing all along, but I set up that color change for success by making my last yarn over, draw through 2 in the row before the new color with the new color. So once again, following along with the pattern, you can go over to the blog and get it. I had 42 rows of my gray. I also made 42 rows of my pearly, and then I switched to a stripe pattern, and I did 1 row stripes. So every row has a forward pass and a return pass in the same color. So for every row, I did my color change at the end of the return, and I did my return pass in the same color as the forward pass. Now I want to talk a little bit about yarn management for the stripe, but I am going to show you the edge stitch one more time since I'm here. There we are. Again, nice neat edge. And my standard return. So let's talk a little bit about the yarn management. One of the reasons I did a 1 row stripe for this beginner project is because I did not want 1,275,000 ends to weave in. So I'm going to take my yarn up from 1 row to the next on the back of the work so that I can just, we call that a float, when you move yarn from here to there without using it. And this way I don't have a trillion ends to weave in. So I'm doing my return in my light color. I'm going to bring up my dark color. And I like to always bring my new color to the left of my old color. It just makes it lay flatter, and I'll show you what I mean in a minute. I'm going to go ahead and take my dark color, yarn over and take it through the last two of the light color. I'm going to let the light color drop and then move forward with my dark color. So this is how I'm going to accomplish the stripes. Forward and back in the same color. And when I return the next row, I'm going to do that last yarn over draw through 2 in my light color, which is sitting here waiting for me. So let's talk about the floats for a second. This is my scarf that I have already finished. I keep mentioning I sew in this studio as well, and today, for whatever reason, I keep finding thread on my pieces. Here are my floats. Can you see them? Yes, you can. Are they on one side and not the other? Yes, they are, because since we always go forward and back, we're only ever changing color on the right-hand side of the work. Do these bother me? No. And the reason they don't bother me is I'm making sure that I'm not pulling them too tight, which would pull the work up, or make them too loosey-goosey, which would make the work stretch out, although the edging is going to hide a multitude of sins. And because I'm very carefully bringing the new yarn up on the left-hand side of the work every single time, look how nice and flat and neat these lay. Is it the end of the world if you go back and forth? No. But if you want them to lay pretty much perfectly, it's a good habit to get into to be consistent. So I've done my 42 rows of gray. I've done 42 rows of my light color. I've done 42 rows in my stripe pattern. The next thing I want to do is end off or close off my final row. Now that my final row of Tunisian crochet is done, I want to close up the final row, as we so often have to do in Tunisian crochet. And you'll notice that I left the gray yarn attached. I'm going to use that for the edging. And it just seemed like I'd be happy enough to start the edging here. I don't see the point in ending it off and then having to reattach yarn. So I'm going to do a traditional crochet slip stitch across my final row of Tunisian crochet. And I'm going to work through the vertical bars as if to Tunisian Simple Stitch. So I'm inserting my hook from right to left, yarn over, draw that loop up, and then bring it through the stitch before. So this is a traditional crochet slip stitch, not a Tunisian slip stitch, which is different. And because we're closing off this row, we are not putting loops on the hook. We're not really doing Tunisian crochet anymore, and we want to do this nice and loose so the piece is the same width as it was when it started, which will make sewing it together a lot easier. So once again, right to left through the vertical bar as if to Tunisian Simple Stitch. Yarn over, draw that loop up, and take it through the working loop. Through the next bar. Yarn over and take it through both loops, the vertical bar and the loop that's on your hook, and keep it nice and loose and even. When I get to this last stitch, I'm going to insert my hook as if to edge stitch and then yarn over and bring it through the stitch and also through the working loop, and now I'm done. Now I haven't quite decided yet if I am going to stitch my seam with the light color or the dark color. I'm going to fiddle with that right now, so I'm going to leave myself a nice long tail of my light color in case I decide that that is what I want to use to stitch my seam up. But we're going to play with it now and see. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that cut end through, and my last row is all finished off and it looks just like the row below. I have folded my scarf into a circle. And I'm going to put a twist in it, but I want to make sure at this point in the game that there are no twists in it. I want to make sure everything is laying flat, and my two short sides I folded in and they're facing each other. But now, since I want this to be a Mobius, I am going to put a twist on it. I'm going to take the top of my light color and flip it. And that is a 180-degree twist. So I took the top and brought it to the bottom to the top. And now what's happening is I have right side facing me and wrong side facing me. So I am going to go ahead and work in my light color. Since I left myself that nice long tail, I'm just going to thread that onto my tapestry needle and do a whip stitch. Now we want to go under both legs of the stitch on this side, and we want to go under the both legs of the stitch on this side. And I'm not going to pull my stitches tight just yet. I want to make sure I have them all in the right place before I tighten up my seam. And you'll notice the top edge, the legs we want to go over on the side where the right side is facing you, it's rolling towards you, and on the side where the wrong side is facing you, it's rolling away from you. So if you want to make a nice neat edge, you have to really make sure that you're getting the top edge loops, that you're not picking up different loops. It's really easy to sort of make a little boo-boo here, especially on your first couple of stitches. So again, under both legs of this side and under both legs of this side, and roll it up towards you if you have to. And we're not tightening up anything yet. We're making sure that we are happy before we tighten things up, because once we tighten things up, it's a little difficult to undo. Whereas if we check things out now, if we've made a mistake, it's really easy to fix. All right, so there's my first 4 or 5 stitches. Nice and even on this side, let's check. Nice and even on this side, nice and even on this side. So now I'm going to go ahead and pull those up. Now normally if you're only doing like 3 or 4 stitches, you can tug on this and they'll all line up. But because the luster has a little bit of a halo on it, I want to make sure it doesn't get caught on itself. So I'm really sort of manually pulling up every couple of stitches and tightening them up. And I think that looks great. That doesn't bother me at all that we're stitching with the light yarn. So I'm actually kind of glad we left that tail. I will do almost anything when I'm designing to make sure that I don't have too many ends to weave in. Check on the other side, tighten her up. So I'm going to do this all the way up to the very end, and then I'm going to take this tail and I'm going to weave it in. So here is my pretty seam on this side and on this side. So I like that, just wove in the end and called it a day. Now, I believe I said earlier that I was going to leave my dark yarn attached because I was going to use it for the edging. The other thing I'm going to do for the edging, I'm going to swap to a traditional crochet hook. I don't need a Tunisian crochet hook anymore. And I'm going down a size because I just think it makes the edge neater. So I did all of my Tunisian crochet. Let's find my long, oh, that's a tail. I gotta weave that in. I did all of my traditional, my Tunisian crochet on an 8mm hook. I'm going to do my edging with a 7mm hook, just to make the edging a tad tighter. I don't want the sides to stretch out. Here is my yarn right here. It's already attached. I'm just going to make a twist for my first loop. I'm going to insert my hook in the stitch, yarn over and draw up a loop, 2 loops on my hook, finish my single crochet. So I'm going to single crochet all the way around. Now, whether I'm on the right hand side of the work like I am down here, I have that nice little edging to work into. And if I'm working on the left side of the work like I am here, I also have that nice little edging to work into, just because we did the edge stitch. And I think I'm going to crochet over that tail. I will weave it in a little better later. But now the next thing I want you to notice that's going to happen, because this is now a Mobius strip, because we made that 180 turn, it's an infinity loop. So there are not 2 different side edges. Mathematically, there's 1 side edge. So I'm going to go around and go around and go around and go around, and I'm going to wind up exactly where I started. Now, I can see, I've been sewing on this table. I'm finding little threads everywhere. I'm so sorry. I feel like I can see when I get here that's the beginning of my edging. If you're concerned that you won't be able to see it, you can go ahead and put a stitch marker in there. And now that I've crocheted over a few stitches, I'm going to let that tail drop. I will weave it in better later, but having crocheted over it for a little while, that's going to make weaving it in quicker. So I'm just going to single crochet all the way around until I get back to the very beginning. Just wanted to point out there's no change going on here. It's just where the color change was in the yarn. So I'm just going to keep single crocheting. I am going to show you where the seam is though, in case that confuses you a little. So now here we are coming up to the seam again, but this is not the end of the round. I'm going to just keep going. And the reason I can tell I can keep going is because I have still some stitches that I have not worked in. And this is what I meant about it mathematically being a one-sided piece. I think I'm going to go into the corner there. I think it needs a little oomph. So it's not a matter of having one side and another side. If it is a mathematical Mobius, there's only one side. It's an infinity loop. It's just going to keep going around and around. You may have to fidge in there. That's a little gappy. I think I'm going to put another single in there. It will depend on your tension, your gauge, how you stitched your piece together, etc. But if it looks a little gappy, like mine did, just stick another stitch in there, like I did. Now I don't have my gap. So I'm going to keep going and going and going. But notice the wrong side of the work had been facing me all the way along. Now that we're passing the seam, there's no changes on the edge, but the right side of the work is now facing me. So I'm going to keep stitching and stitching and stitching. All right, I am coming up to the end of my giant long round. And as you will see in a second, as I come up to the end, there's that single crochet I started the round with. So that is what I meant when I said once you have formed your Mobius strip, you're going to have one giant round. Now, for me personally, this is all the edging I want. So I'm going to join that with a slip stitch. Cut my yarn. Pull it through the loop. And leave myself a decent sized tail to weave in. So I'm happy with this. I don't want any more edging. That said, you can put more edging if you want. Now that you have this nice single crochet base to work from, you could put any kind of an edging here that you want. Maybe a row of doubles and then another row of singles, maybe shells, maybe something lacy, something textured. It's your scarf. You can do whatever you want. The other thing I will mention is I am pretty satisfied with my gauge. I don't have a lot of curling. There is a little bit of curling in on the sides that traditionally happens with Tunisian Simple Stitch, but putting the single crochet edging on there prevents a lot of that. If, and I'm not saying you did, but if you got a little carried away and you were stitching a little too tight and it's curling like crazy, two things. One is blocking is your friend. Even though this is acrylic, you can hit it very lightly and from a few inches away with some steam. Don't get right on top of it because you'll kill it. Or putting more rounds of border on will help that horizontal curl. Generally speaking, that curl is accentuated by crocheting a little too tight. So if this is your first project, maybe later go up a hook size and see what that does to your gauge. The last thing I have to do is weave in just a few ends. All right, here it is. I have it sort of double twisted here. You can wear it like this, or you can wear it sort of in a long version, whichever floats your boat, but I have it here so you could get all the whole thing into the camera shot. But I hope you had a good time making this. It's a great first project if you're just learning how to do Tunisian crochet, and it's a lot of fun, and you can easily customize it to your own length or width or colors. So I'm Mary Beth Temple. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. Click the playlist to see the other Tunisian Tuesday videos, and thanks for sticking around.